She had come to the solar to speak, not to stay. That was the truth she repeated to herself as she crossed the threshold, the heavy wooden door closing softly behind her. The room was warm, too warm after the chill of the stone corridors, and lit by a low, steady fire that cast long shadows across the walls. Outside, night pressed close against the tall windows, the keep settling into its quieter hours. The Duke stood near the hearth, one hand resting on the mantel, his back to her as she entered. He did not turn at once. "You asked for me," she says, keeping her voice steady. "Yes," he replies. He turns then, slow and deliberate, his expression composed in the way it always is when he is weighing something important. He does not smile. He does not soften his gaze. "You're late," he adds. "You sent for me after dusk. And you came anyway." "I came to deliver a message," she says, adjusting her grip on the folded parchment in her hand. "From the southern estates." "Yes. And once I've done that, I'll leave." "That was the plan," he agrees. The way he says it, past tense, does not escape her. She steps closer, stopping a respectful distance from him. The firelight reaches her now, warming her skin through the layers of her gown. It is a simple thing, well made but modest, sleeves fitted neatly to her arms, bodice laced properly, neckline high enough to be beyond reproach. "You should sit," he says. "I'd rather stand. You've been on your feet all day." "That's not your concern." "No," he agrees. "But it is my observation." She exhales slowly, then crosses to the chair near the table, sitting only because refusing feels suddenly more conspicuous than compliance. He watches her as she does, his gaze flicking briefly to the way she adjusts her skirts, the way her shoulders remain tense even as she settles. "You're holding yourself very stiffly," he says. "I'm tired." "Yes," he replies. "And guarded." She looks up at him sharply. "That's an assumption." "No," he says. "It's experience." He moves closer, stopping just within her personal space. Not invading it, but close enough that she feels the shift. The scent of smoke and leather clings faintly to him, familiar and grounding. "Give me the message," he says. She does, handing him the parchment. Their fingers brush in the exchange, briefly, accidentally. Still, the contact lingers in her awareness long after he's withdrawn his hand. He reads in silence, eyes scanning the lines quickly. She watches him while he does, noting the way the firelight catches in his hair, the stillness of him as he absorbs information. When he finishes, he folds the parchment carefully and sets it aside. "That confirms what I suspected," he says. "Then my task is done." "Yes." She waits for dismissal. Does not come. Instead, he remains where he is, gaze lifting to meet hers again. "You're warm," he observes. She blinks. "Excuse me." "You flushed," he says. "The ride in from the outer ward was cold. The fire is too close." "I'm fine," she replies automatically. "You always say that." She shifts slightly in her chair, suddenly aware of the heat in the room, of the way the fire seems closer now that he's mentioned it. "You could open a window," she says. "I could," he agrees. "But that wouldn't address the real issue." "And what is that?" she asks. "That you don't know how to rest," he replies calmly. She scoffs softly. "You didn't summon me here to critique my habits." "No," he agrees. "But I won't ignore what's in front of me." She studies him for a moment, irritation and something else threading together uncomfortably. "You're crossing a line," she says. "Yes," he replies. "And you're saying it like you're aware of it." "I am." That alone unsettles her. He gestures toward her shoulder. Not touching, not yet, just indicating. "You're overheating," he says. "The gown is too heavy for this room." "It's appropriate," she counters. "For the corridor," he says. "Not for standing this close to the fire." She glances down reflexively at her gown, at the way the fabric sits properly, respectably. "I'm not undressing," she says flatly. He lifts an eyebrow slightly. "I didn't suggest you should." "Then what are you suggesting?" "That you allow some air," he replies. "Before you grow faint." "I won't faint." "You might," he says. "And I prefer to avoid that." She opens her mouth to argue, then closes it again when she realizes how shallow her breathing has become. The heat, the long day, the enclosed space. It's all catching up to her. You're making this sound urgent, she says. It is, he replies. For your comfort. And nothing else. He holds her gaze. Nothing else. The pause stretches. The fire pops softly behind him. You could step back, she says. I could, he agrees. And you're not going to. No. She shifts in her chair again. A faint dizziness brushing the edge of her awareness. She hates that he might be right. What exactly do you intend to do? She asks. He does not answer immediately. Instead, he lowers himself slightly, bringing himself closer to her eye level. Not looming, not kneeling, simply reducing the space between them so his voice carries only to her. I intend, he says slowly, to ease the heat. Her pulse stutters. That's unnecessary, she says, but the protest lacks conviction. No, he replies. It's considerate. He lifts one hand, stopping short of touching her shoulder. You can tell me to stop, he says quietly. The offer is real. The pause intentional. She looks at his hand, then at his face. Several things occur to her at once. How close he is, how warm the room has become, how the fabric of her gown presses at her collarbone. Just, she begins then stops. Just what? He asks. Just the shoulder, she says finally. Nothing else. Yes, he replies. And then you step back. Yes. The agreement settles between them, precise and fragile. He moves slowly, deliberately, fingers brushing the fabric at her shoulder. The contact is light, careful. He slides the gown just enough that it loosens from one shoulder, the fabric slipping down to reveal skin that has not seen air since morning. She gasps. The sound escapes her before she can stop it, not loud but sharp enough to betray surprise. He stills immediately. You're all right, he says softly. Yes, she replies, though her heart is racing. You didn't expect that. No. And you didn't stop me. No. The firelight kisses the exposed skin of her shoulder, the cool air sending a shiver through her. This was supposed to be practical, she says. It is, he replies. Your breathing's already deeper. She hates that he's right. You should stop, she says. I can, he replies. But you won't. No. Her voice drops. You said just the shoulder. Yes. And you've done that. Yes. Then step back. He hesitates, not long but long enough for the hesitation to mean something. You're still tense, he says. That's not your concern. It is, he replies, if you're in my care. The words settle between them with unexpected weight. I didn't ask for that, she says. No, he agrees. But you didn't refuse it either. She looks at him, really looks at him now, the steadiness of his gaze, the restraint in his movements. You're very dangerous, she murmurs. Yes, he replies. And you're doing this without force. Yes. Her breath catches again as his fingers rest lightly at her shoulder, not moving further, but not withdrawing either. You should give me space, she says. I will, he replies. When you ask me to stop. The fire crackles softly. The room feels suddenly very small. She swallows, aware of how exposed she feels, of how aware she is of every breath. You've already gone too far, she says. Yes, he agrees. If we pretend this was nothing. She closes her eyes briefly, then opens them again. You slipped my gown, she says. Yes. And you didn't stop when I gasped. No. The truth of it hums between them. And now, she continues, you're waiting. Yes. She exhales slowly, her pulse loud in her ears. I came here for a reason, she says. Yes. And it wasn't this. No. But this is happening anyway. Yes. She looks down at her exposed shoulder, then back up at him. You're changing things, she says. Yes. And you're prepared for the consequences. Yes. The certainty in his voice steadies her even as it unsettles her. This won't end quietly, she says. No. She draws a slow breath. Just, she starts again then stops. He waits. Don't move, she says finally. He doesn't. And in the firelit solar, with her gown slipped from one shoulder and the weight of what's begun settling between them, she realizes with sudden clarity. This was never going to end with the message delivered and a door closed. And the Duke has no intention of pretending otherwise. He does not move. That, more than anything else, steadies her. The fire breathes softly behind him. A low crackle that fills the space where words might rush in. Her exposed shoulder cools as the air shifts, the contrast sharp enough to keep her alert. She becomes acutely aware of her breathing. Slower now, deeper, no longer caught at the top of her chest. "You told me not to move," he says quietly. "Yes. And you didn't say why." "I didn't need to," she replies. He inclines his head a fraction, acknowledging the truth of it. His hand remains where it is, light at her shoulder, not sliding further, not retreating. The contact is controlled, intentional, a promise of restraint rather than its failure. "You're not faint," he observes. "No. Your color's better." "Yes. And yet," he adds, eyes steady, "you haven't asked me to step away." She swallows. "You're very observant." "It's part of my duty." She lets out a soft, almost humorless breath. "You can't hide behind that." "I'm not hiding," he says. "I'm standing exactly where you left me." The truth of it presses close. She lifts her chin slightly, testing the room. Its warmth, the low ceiling, the tall windows veiled by night. Outside, the keep settles. Somewhere distant, a door closes. Somewhere closer, a servant's footsteps pass and fade. The solar remains theirs, suspended in the quiet that follows a long day. "You're waiting," she says. "Yes. For permission. For clarity," he corrects. Her gaze drops briefly to his hand, to the line of his wrist against the fabric of her gown. "You already have it." "I have the moment," he says. "I don't have the next one." She considers that, the way he draws lines not to retreat but to keep from crossing without invitation. "You're careful," she says. "Yes. And you don't pretend that makes this safe." "No." She shifts in her chair, angling slightly toward him. The movement is small, but it brings them closer. Close enough that the heat between them feels shared rather than separate. He notices. "You turned toward me," he says. "Yes. And you didn't pull the gown back up." "No." The admission lands heavier than she expects. "You didn't expect this," she says. "No," he replies. "But I recognized it when it arrived." She studies his face, searching for something unsteady. She finds none. The steadiness is not indifference. It is intention held in check. "This will complicate things," she says. "Yes. You'll be watched more closely." "Yes. And so will I." "Yes. And you're not offering secrecy." "No." The fire pops softly, a spark lifting and settling. "Then why here?" she asks. "Why now?" He answers without hesitation. "Because you came when you didn't have to. Because you stayed when you could have left. Because you didn't ask me to pretend this is nothing." Her pulse quickens. "You're very direct," she says. "I prefer honesty to confusion." She lets her shoulders relax a fraction. The looseness unfamiliar but grounding. The exposed skin at her shoulder warms again. Not from the fire alone. "You said this was about easing the heat," she says. "Yes. And it has." "Yes. But it's also about something else." "Yes." She lifts her eyes to his. "Say it." He does not rush the answer. It's about recognizing when care becomes intention, and choosing what to do with that truth. The words settle between them, careful and unadorned. She draws a slow breath. "If we continue, it won't be accidental." "No." "And it won't be reversible." "No." "And you won't pretend afterward." "No." She nods once. "Neither will I." The agreement feels heavier than any vow. She stands then, the movement slow, deliberate. He steps back half a pace automatically, making room without being asked. The respect in the gesture steadies her further. "You're giving me space," she says. "Yes." "And you don't have to." "No." "But you are." "Yes." She rises to her feet fully, the hem of her gown whispering against the floor. The shoulder remains bare. She does not pull the fabric up. "You're still warm," he says. "Yes." "And the room hasn't changed." "No." She takes a step toward the hearth, then stops. The firelight paints her profile in gold and shadow. She becomes aware of herself in the room, not as spectacle but as presence. "You could close the window," she says. I could. But you won't. No. She turns back to him. You're not trying to make this easier. I'm trying to make it deliberate. She considers that. Then, without looking away, she reaches up and loosens the lace at the neckline just a fraction. Enough to ease the pressure, not enough to invite scandal. The movement is small. It is unmistakable. He stills completely. You did that yourself, he says. Yes. And you're not asking for my help. No. But you're not refusing it either. No. The air between them tightens, not with urgency but with recognition. You're changing the terms, he says. I'm clarifying them. He inclines his head. Understood. He does not step forward. He waits. She takes another breath, then crosses the space between them, stopping close enough to feel his warmth, close enough to hear the quiet steadiness of his breathing. You're very controlled, she says softly. Yes. And you don't lose yourself. No. She lifts her hand, hesitates, then rests it lightly at his forearm. The contact is brief, deliberate. You can step back, she says. I won't unless you asked. I'm not asking. His gaze darkens, not with hunger but with focus. You touched me, he says. Yes. And you didn't flinch. No. She lets her hand fall away, the absence immediate. This is becoming complicated, she says. Yes. And you're not simplifying it. No. She studies him for a long moment, then speaks more quietly. I don't want this to be something that happens because the room is warm and the day was long. Neither do I. I want it to be something we can carry into daylight. Yes. Into counsel. Yes. Into consequence. Yes. The steadiness of his replies anchors her. Then we should stop here, she says. He does not argue. If that's what you want. She closes her eyes briefly, weighing the truth of it. When she opens them again, she meets his gaze. It's not, she says. Then tell me what is. She exhales. I want us to be clear about what we're choosing. Then say it. She looks down at the floor between them, then back up. We're choosing to continue, not because it's easy, but because it's honest. Yes. And we're choosing to do it without hiding. Yes. And without pretending we can undo it later. Yes. She nods once. Good. He shifts then, just enough to stand beside her rather than in front of her, aligning instead of advancing. The change in position is subtle, but meaningful. You're not cornered, he says. No. And you're not following. No. They stand shoulder to shoulder, facing the fire. The closeness is different now. Less charged, more grounded, but no less intimate. You didn't stop when I gasped, she says quietly. No. But you stopped short of taking. Yes. She turns her head slightly, studying his profile. That matters. Yes. The fire burns low, the room settling into a quieter warmth. You should pull the gown back up, he says. She considers it, then does, slowly, deliberately, returning the fabric to her shoulder. The gesture is not retreat, it is choice. There, she says. Better. Yes. And now, she adds, we decide what comes next. He turns to face her. Tomorrow, he says, we speak again. In the open. Yes. And tonight. Tonight, he replies. We leave this room knowing exactly what we've begun, and exactly what it will require. She nods. I can accept that. He steps back another half pace, giving her space to pass. You can go, he says. Yes. She moves toward the door, then pauses with her hand on the latch. You didn't stop when I gasped, she says again, not turning. No. And you won't pretend you didn't notice. No. She opens the door, the cooler air of the corridor brushing her face. Good, she says. When she steps out, she does not look back immediately. When she does, he is still there, standing where she left him, composed, attentive, changed. And as she walks away, she understands something with sudden clarity. This did not begin because the Duke slipped her gown from one shoulder. It began because neither of them pretended it was nothing. Morning comes differently after a night like that. The keep wakes as it always does, bells tolling the hour, servants moving with practiced efficiency, guards changing watch along the walls. But for her, everything feels newly sharpened, as if the world has tilted just enough to demand attention. She dresses slowly, deliberately. The gown she chooses is neither modest to the point of concealment nor provocative enough to invite comment. It is well-fitted, appropriate, unmistakably hers. When she laces it, she does so carefully, leaving room to breathe. When she drapes her shawl across her shoulders, she does not wrap it tightly. She does not armor herself. By the time she steps into the corridor, her thoughts are clear. What happened in the solar was not a mistake of heat or proximity. It was not a lapse. It was a decision paused mid-breath. Not abandoned, not indulged, but acknowledged. And now it must be carried into the light. The council chamber is already filling when she arrives. Murmured conversation echoes against stone. Advisors gathering in familiar clusters. She takes her place along the table without hesitation. The Duke enters moments later. He does not look for her immediately. That too is deliberate. He greets the council with measured courtesy, his presence commanding without spectacle. Only when he reaches the head of the table does his gaze flick briefly to her. No longer than propriety allows, but long enough to confirm something essential. They are aligned. The meeting begins. Trade routes. Winter stores. A border dispute that requires careful language and firmer resolve. She speaks when necessary, her voice steady, her insight precise. He listens, not indulgently, not dismissively, but with attention that signals respect rather than favor. Others notice. They always do. Pause here. A glance there. The subtle shift in how often he seeks her counsel before deciding. It is not overt. Does not need to be. By the time the council adjourns, the room hums with quiet awareness. As the others begin to disperse, he speaks. Remain. The word is not loud, but it is unmistakable. She does not move. The chamber empties quickly after that. Doors close. Footsteps fade. Silence settles, different from the quiet of the solar, but no less charged. He steps away from the head of the table, stopping a respectful distance from her. You came, he says. Yes. And you did not avoid me. No. You did not retreat. No. He nods once. Good. She meets his gaze evenly. You meant what you said. Yes. And you weren't waiting for me to pretend last night didn't happen. No. Nor were you waiting to take advantage of it. No. The clarity between them steadies her. This changes how we move, she says. Yes. And how others see us. Yes. You're prepared for that. I already am, he replies. She considers him for a long moment. You didn't summon me privately, she says. You let this begin here. Yes. And that was intentional. Yes. She inclines her head slightly. I appreciate that. His expression shifts, not into a smile, but into something quieter, something like acknowledgement. I won't place you in shadow, he says. And I won't pretend this is casual. Good, she replies. Because it isn't. They stand in the open chamber, the firelight from the hearth warming the stone beneath their feet. You slipped my gown, she says softly. Yes. And you didn't stop when I gasped. No. But you did stop short of taking what wasn't offered. Yes. That restraint mattered, she continues. It still does, he replies. She draws a slow breath. This won't be simple, she says. No. And it won't be quiet. No. And it won't always be comfortable. No. She lifts her chin slightly. Then we're agreed. He studies her, the weight of the moment settling fully now. We are. There is no kiss. There is no dramatic declaration. There does not need to be. Later that day, as the keep moves into its rhythm, the consequences begin to ripple outward. A steward hesitates before addressing her, then inclines his head more deeply than before. A visiting lord watches her closely during the midday meal, curiosity undisguised. A servant whispers behind a hand, then stops when she meets their gaze. She does not flinch, nor does the Duke correct them. He does not claim her publicly, but he does not distance himself either. When they walk the outer courtyard later that afternoon, he keeps pace beside her, not ahead, not behind. When he pauses to speak with the guard, he does not ask her to wait elsewhere. The message is subtle. It is unmistakable. That evening, as dusk settles and the keep quiets again, She finds herself once more outside the solar. She does not enter immediately. Instead, she rests her hand briefly against the door, steadying herself. Inside, the fire burns low. He looks up when she enters, expression calm, attentive. You returned, he says. Yes. And not because you were summoned. No. He nods. Good. She steps into the room, closing the door behind her this time. Not hurriedly, not theatrically, but with purpose. You didn't forget the door was open last night, she says. No. You left it that way. Yes. And today you chose to be seen. Yes. She crosses the room, stopping a careful distance from him. This isn't about secrecy anymore, she says. No. It's about intention. Yes. She meets his gaze. Then we should be honest about what we're doing. He inclines his head slightly. Then say it. She draws a steady breath. We are choosing this. Not because it's easy, but because it's deliberate. Yes. And because we're willing to stand by it. Yes. He does not move closer. Neither does she. The firelight flickers softly, the room holding the weight of what's been said. You won't rush this, she says. No. And you won't pull away when it becomes inconvenient. No. She nods once. Then neither will I. The agreement settles, complete. He steps closer then. Not abruptly, not possessively, but enough that the space between them narrows to something warm and steady. You're not overheated tonight, he observes. No, she replies. I dressed for the room. And you chose to come anyway. Yes. He lifts his hand, stopping short of touching her, the pause deliberate. You can tell me to stop, he says. I know, she replies. And you won't unless you need to. No. She closes the remaining distance herself, resting her hand lightly against his chest, feeling the calm strength beneath. This time, she says softly, it isn't about easing the heat. No, he agrees. It's about acknowledging what's already there. Yes. They stand like that for a long moment, the intimacy quieter now, deeper for having survived daylight and consequence. You slipped my gown, she says one last time. Yes. And didn't stop when I gasped. No. He meets her gaze. And you stayed. Yes. The fire burns low. Outside, the keep settles into night once more. And this time, when they stand together in the warmth of the solar, there is no confusion about where it began, or where it is going. Because it did not start with a gown slipping from one shoulder. It started when neither of them pretended the moment didn't matter. And it will continue, not in secrecy, not in haste, but in full awareness of everything it requires.